hello, good evening, good morning, good afternoon, whatever it is, wherever you happen to be. My name is Paul. I'm also called Knickknack. I'm the brains behind Knickknack's Old Peculiar, the world's most boringly repetitive blog, and behind a hell of a lot of stuff. I write the daily teaser quiz, which is fun and enjoyable, or else. I talk about movies as and when I get a chance to see them, and I also talk about TV shows I'm watching, or at least I talk about TV shows I'm watching if I think you're going to enjoy what I thought about. That's kind of why I'm recording this video and airing it on YouTube and on my blog. I saw today is Friday the 31st of May. Yesterday was Thursday the 30th, and I saw the last ever episode of Star Trek Discovery last night, and I thought you might want to know what I thought about it. The episode was Life Itself. Episode 10, Life Itself, opens with a summary of earlier episodes and then shifts to show us the progenitor device unfolding near the two black holes we've seen in earlier episodes, whilst Captain Burnham, Sonequa Martin Green, follows Mol, Eve Harlow, through the portal, only to find herself, Captain Burnham I should say, finds herself in a strange dimension, one that seems to have long roads leading to a distant light, and equally strange windows to other worlds, quite dangerous windows leading to very dangerous places. It's only when she's attacked by a Breen trooper and barely escapes with her life that she finds out how dangerous those places can be. It's only after she fights a second Breen trooper that she meets a badly injured Mol and realises the pair need to work together. In the real world, things are getting just as dangerous for the Discovery. In order to help Captain Burnham, Commander Rayner, Callum Keith Raney, and the crew of the Discovery desperately have to tractor beam the progenitor device into the Discovery's hold. They're very aware they're fighting the gravity from two black holes and against the clock, as Primate Hull's Breen Dreadnought is rapidly getting closer. It's only when the crew realise they can split up, Rayner and the Discovery holding off the Breen, Book and Dr. Culber, David Ajala and Wilson Cruz keeping the portal steady, that the situation improves, as it gives Saru and Nan, Doug Jones and Rachel Atterell, a chance to do some urgent negotiation with the Breen and to give the Discovery room to breathe and do its job, and try and contact the captain. What Rayner, Book and the crew of the Discovery don't know is that Captain Burnham has just met a progenitor and that things are getting interesting. Now, what did I make of both the episode Life Itself and the season it's the climax to, and to the series itself? I'll try and keep it brief because obviously you're not going to want to listen to me burbling all the time, but there we go. First things first, the episode Life Itself. I have to confess I've got mostly positive feelings about the episode, but somewhat mixed feelings about it. On the one hand, and I've said this before a few times, the older I get, the less patient I am with long episodes. 45 minutes to an hour? That's fine for me. The 87 minutes of Life Itself, as wonderfully made as this season and this episode have been, and allowing for the fact that Life Itself was wrapping up this season and the series, I found Life Itself was pushing my limits. Possibly splitting it into two could have helped there, I think. Additionally, I think the episode had a few noticeable gear changes in it. That's inevitable, I think, given the length. And it was also something that was somewhat annoying. Mostly because it's going at a fast pace at one section and then slowing right down in the next. I found my attention wandering somewhat when Burnham was talking to the progenitor and to Mol. The chattier scenes were pause, take a deep breath, unpause, carry on watching. They got me fidgeting. Granted that these scenes were needed, we learn much of the progenitors, including the fact that technology we think they'd created was technology they'd found, technology left by an even older species than they. And importantly, we learn that the progenitor's technology could create life, but not restore the dead. Couldn't restore life, as Moll had hoped. We also needed to see the resolution these scenes give to the story. We see Burnham's refusal to take control of the technology and placing it in the black hole to place it beyond use. Like I say, they were well made, well acted. Sonequa Martin Green is very watchable, but they were scenes that had me fidgeting in boredom. They were needed, but could have held my attention far more than they did. With all of that lot said, I don't know that I can fault Life itself, or at least fault it too much. From what I've understood, the episode was supposed to be the concluding series of season 5, and it wasn't until the producers decided that the 5th season was to be the show's last, it wasn't going to be the ending episode. So I've come away from watching Life itself thinking the show's makers had to edit or rewrite and significantly add to the episode so that instead of tying up 1 year's worth of loose ends, it was tying up 5 years of loose ends. It means that we've come away from an episode that I think was quite potentially doing a little bit too much, or as Mark Kermode always puts it on his shows, maybe half an hour too long. Thank you for that, Ripper. Yes, what we see is beautifully written, is beautifully acted, and wonderfully designed. The visuals of the episode, the look of the portal's insides, the path that connected different worlds, the device itself, were utterly gorgeous. But Life itself does not necessarily see the crew getting the justice and the airtime I think they deserve. Yes, we see many of them at Saru and Tarina's wedding, and that was nicely done. Tara Roslind's outfit was incredible. Yes, we see Michael Burnham promoted to an admiral, no less, and Cleveland Booker growing old together, and we meet Leto, their adult son. And yes, we see Admiral Burnham, taking the now refurbished Discovery to an unknown fate, one I suspect may tie in with the Calypso short track episode from many years ago. But, and I say this again, we see very little of what's happened to the crew, and we see or learn nothing of what happens with the Breen Civil War. Personally, I think that is a screaming shame, because what we get is a well-made finale of a show that ended without a 6th season that could have told us more. This show finished too soon. There is possibly a lot more I could say here, but there are a couple of minor points, minor observations, if you will, that I felt I could or should highlight. The fight scenes, Captain Burnham against both a pair of Breen troopers and against Moll, and the battle between the Discovery and the Breen ship were spectacular. There's been a lot of work going on those, both in terms of choreographing the fight scenes and this bloody huge great space battle that ends up with the Discovery splitting in two, splitting off its hull section and using its spore drive on the Breen ship to send it right to the end of the galaxy. There was, like I say, work done on those, and quite a hell of a lot of budget, I suspect, as well. But exciting as those fights and space battles were, there were other things that caught my mind. The effects as Michael travels through the portal were absolutely gorgeous and wonderful to watch. I could have spent a good few minutes watching those effects for quite some time. I don't think they reminded me of the Stargate effects in 2001: A Space Odyssey, but I'm willing to bet that whoever designed that sequence had seen the film, or had seen the film and thought, that's a good wheeze. The actual portal itself, the long path in the alternative pocket dimension, the one that acted as a gateway between different worlds, Partly had me thinking of the Wood Between the World in C.S. Lewis's The Magician's Nephew. Go look it up, Google for it. But it also had me thinking of, more specifically, of The Way in Greg Bear's Eon. It's a similar long corridor in a pocket dimension that has windows to other worlds along the way. To me, the resemblance was striking. It just seemed a very, very, very familiar idea. Again, I don't know if any one of the design crew or writers read Eon, but that's what I got thinking of. The Way. Literally the whole of the way, minus the big city going down the singularity in the middle. Again, I recommend you read it because it's a fascinating thing to see. The one thing that struck me, though, about the whole of that pocket dimension was possibly something I can't stress too many times. The portal, the corridor, the set, the planet that Michael Burnham and Book retire to, the setting for Saru and Tarina's wedding. Those settings were utterly bloody gorgeous. The fact Life itself as an episode I found potentially too long is kind of irrelevant because a hell of a lot of that episode last night was just gorgeous to look at. The actual device itself, the setting in a field of what looked like just gorgeous rhododendrons, utterly beautiful to look at. Given everything I've said to date, yes, you're right. I think Life itself, as a concluding episode, is both beautiful and flawed, as is the show it's the conclusion to. Back when I started watching Star Trek Discovery in 2017,
It's 22:45.
Thank you, Ripper. I have to admit, I thoroughly enjoyed it, but there were times I found it a little too right on, a little too progressive, a little too lovey dovey for its own good. Reminiscent, in fact, of Star Trek the Next Generation's early years, in other words, that had, if I recall correctly, many of the same sort of accusations thrown at it. As one possible example with Discovery, I feel the producers emphasised the fact the series had the show's first same-sex married couple, Hugh Culber and Paul Stamets, Wilson Cruz and Anthony Rapp. They made, from what I remember, a big thing of it when they emphasise, look, we're progressive, we've got a same-sex married couple, when they could have been emphasising that the pair were members of the ship's medical staff, or one of them was, and that the other was one of the ship's senior scientific team, in fact, in charge of the experimental drive on the thing. The fact that they were two men happily married to each other should, I think, have been incidental. To give the writers and the producers and the two actors concerned their due, they seem to realise that and change the emphasis in later series. To the point in season 5, we have a happily married couple who are deeply in love with each other and their family, and is committing to their jobs as much as they are to each other. And again, the fact that they're married, two men married to each other, incidental, it's no big deal, which was made. It's not the big deal it was made in the earlier days of the series. It's just get married. I think the relationship, or their relationship, is kind of symbolic of the show as a whole. Their tale, along with Captain Burnham's. Their story has unfolded and has improved and changed over the course of these 5 series. And noticeably so in Series 3, I felt, with the shift to the 32nd century. Yes, in all of the shows, there's been times when there's been more talk than there has been action, which I like to see, I'll be honest with you. Give me a big space battle anytime. But even saying that, Star Trek Discovery, with its overarching story per series, that was different and new and exciting for Star Trek. Given its very lovey-dovey nature, it's been worth the watch, as has its cast. Yes, I feel some of the junior characters, Detmer, Uwasekin, Reese, Bryce, didn't get enough airtime. Or second in particular, I think she did the one or two times that focused on her character. It seemed very well done. She always seemed very wise and ready to offer some good advice, as well as be the ship's pilot. Okay, there were characters I feel didn't get enough time, but the ensemble as a whole was superb. David Ajala stood out for me, as did Tig Notaro as the chief engineer, Jet Reno, and Michelle Yeoh as Philippa Giorgio. But the star, as always and as ever, was Sonequa Martin Green, playing a captain as feisty as Kirk, as commanding as Picard, as wise as Janeway and Archer, and as diplomatic as Pike, and as ruthless when needed as Sisko. If ever a series had a stunning central character, it's Star Trek Discovery, and it is a screaming shame that CBS or Paramount have decided to cancel this show. We had, I feel, room for at least one more series of Star Trek Discovery, one that shows us, for example, how the Breen Civil War ended and how the new 32nd Century Federation interacted with it, and how Captain Burnham and the Discovery dealt with those results. Paramount may well be trying to save money, but I think they missed a chance by commissioning a sixth series. They've concluded the show a year too early. There is possibly something I should raise. Possibly. Although, equally, it's possibly something that doesn't or shouldn't need me to. Maybe. One thing I've noticed over the years is that Star Trek Deep Space Nine's Ben Sisko, Avery Brooks, possibly one of the most intense lead characters the show's ever generated, and Star Trek Discovery's Michael Burnham were both their show's main characters, and for most of each series, captains. But they started their shows at lower ranks. Sisko was a commander rather than a captain, Burnham likewise, and even got booted downwards after mutinying. Yes, seeing the pair's ups and downs as part of their stories made for a riveting watch, but I couldn't help but notice that the only two characters who had to work their way up to captain were characters of colour. Every other white central character, Kirk, Picard, Janeway, Archer, Pike, were or are captains from their first episode. I don't want to push things here. I don't know if it's my place to. But I think the next lead character of colour that Star Trek introduces should also be a captain from episode 1. It's that simple. Either that, or they be a white character that also has, like their two people of colour predecessors, they have to work their way up to captain. That, for the look of things, could serve equality well. I don't know if it's my place to point this one out, but I think it's something that, to me, seemed noticeable and could be corrected. Right, that, I think, is where I'm going to have to leave my reviews of Star Trek Discovery. The show is unfortunately and sadly over, despite, I suspect, many of us wanting to see just one more series, even if it's a 10-episode one like Series 5. I can only hope you've enjoyed what you've seen of the show, and I can only hope equally as much that you've enjoyed my reviews as much as I've enjoyed making them. If you have, thank you for watching. Please feel free to subscribe to my channel. Please feel free to hit like and share on anything of mine you see. Please feel free to put a few quid in the tip jar as well, because every penny helps write this show and pay for the electricity to make it. But like I say, I can only hope you'll be subscribing and hitting the notification bell so that you can keep your eye peeled for more reviews, more teasers, and more stuff. There will be more of those teasers and reviews, as and when I get the chance to make more, and that is going to be sooner than you think. I will be watching the next episode of Doctor Who's new season, Dot and the Bubble, on Saturday the 1st of June, tomorrow as I record this, and I will be posting my written and video reviews of it hopefully by Sunday the 2nd of June. Hopefully, and whatever else happens, I will see you then. Take care, be good, keep it wibbly wobbly, live long and prosper, and whatever you do, be seeing you.